Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult, video number 246, When It Rains, Frogs, Fish, etc. This is something that actually comes, like when I was a kid, there was a book in the local library, like Encyclopedia of the Unexplained or the Weird or something like that. And I always had fun reading that, and one of the sections was about, basically when it rains, or there's a storm or a tornado or hailstones or whatever, and there's like frogs or fish or whatever coming from the sky, essentially. And this has been actually recorded. It's not a fake thing. This is not fake news. It's actually something that happens. Normally, what I would assume is that you get a formation of hail or something under weird atmospheric conditions, and things get frozen into the hail and then they come down. You get a severe weather pattern. What I'm wondering, though, is how a frog or a fish or something could actually get trapped in the hail, or how they could get swept up into a cloud. I'm trying to explain in my mind how there would be enough buoyancy to actually keep them afloat long enough for them to come back down from the ocean or from a pond or whatever. I'm assuming that this is one of those situations where its science is yet unexplained. If you told someone 100 years ago that there had been a rain of frogs, they would assume you were referring to the biblical, and this is an important facet within the occult I'll get to in a moment. They would assume you were talking about spirituality. They would say you're talking about the biblical, specifically in the Abrahamic sense, like the tale of Exodus or something. Now, though, we would say it's some unexplained phenomenon. It's a physical, natural sort of phenomenon that you're seeing. We simply haven't fully explained it, and so it fits into the realm of the paranormal, the weird, and the unexplained, but it doesn't fit into the realm of the religious anymore. It has a potential rational hypothesis behind it that simply hasn't been properly tested. In the future we may, in which case it falls under science. Weird science, you could call it. This has happened many times within the occult. You'd look at alchemy. In the original sense, alchemy, when we think of the court magician as the way that it's portrayed by Hollywood, we're looking at tropes that have to deal with alchemists, people who are dabbling in chemistry, early medicine in the chemical sense, things of that nature, talking about natural science and often dragging symbols involving angels or dragons or whatever into it. We're talking about proto-science. This was not at first, though, understood. The illiterate, ignorant lay people of the Renaissance or the medieval era just saw it as magic. They saw it as this person's dealing with demons and angels and weird shit like that. Fast forward a few hundred years to the Enlightenment, you get a lot more of a sense of it being simply chemistry. And you get analysis, early analysis of it at the time as being so. It's simply odd, aberrant chemistry that has spiritual overtones and wasn't fully explained, and even then wasn't fully quantified. Now we look at alchemical works, and that which is not strictly symbolic, we say these are chemical manifestos of various kinds. They were creating counterfeit gold and silver. They were creating what they considered medicine, sometimes with a lot of lead or mercury in it, so not sure how good it was for you. They were creating chemical compounds. They were creating odd effects that they considered to be otherworldly or divine, and they were trying to quantify these sorts of things, often using spiritual language. The same, I would say, is true of rains of frogs or fish, things of that nature, and some of them more odd than others, which is that what you're seeing is a natural phenomenon, but it is still paranormal, and it is technically occult in nature, and we have to understand this. Just because it's been explained doesn't mean it's occult. It's the same exact thing as being spoken of. It's just that you've quantified it to a greater degree. You're in the beginning stage, there's no explanation that's rational. You consider it spiritual. In the intermediate stage, which is where we are on something like this, it's something weird and unexplained, but you understand that it can have a rational phenomenon behind it. That is, that it can be real, and then in the final stage, you've fully rationalized. The one caution, and Morgert speaks about this actually in lake monster traditions, is that sometimes none of these explanations are true because there's simply no actual phenomenon there. That is, it's totally false. He speaks of lake monsters as being, well, the occultist proposes a transcendental explanation for the phenomenon witnessed. The rationalist claims a biological phenomenon. And then the Fortean zoologist, the cryptid researcher, would say that it's something that's unexplained, like the lake monster is a plesiosaur. It's something out of place. It's something unexplainable in some cases. But all three are arguing that there's something to quantify. They're simply giving different explanations, different rationalizations of what's being seen. A truer skeptic would say there's simply nothing there to be rationalized. You're literally just seeing floating logs. Someone saw a moose swimming, another one saw a floating log, another one read too many Native American folk stories and then had a nightmare, and they're all basically explaining the same thing, and it leans into a folklore that grows over time and can become part of local memory, and everyone claims that they saw something or remembers somebody who did, and just becomes a facet of local culture without there being anything to quantify. No spirit, no lost plesiosaur, no species of large sturgeons, literally nothing, just a floating log. I don't think this, though, is the case for rains of frogs and fish. I mean, I've seen literally videos on YouTube of rivers turning red as blood simply because of chemical reactions or algae blooms. Strange things of that nature do happen. A lot of these things, as little as a few decades ago, would have been considered primarily otherworldly. In the third world, they still would be. We now recognize them as scientific fact. We simply hypothesize the methods by which they happen. I do find it a little odd, though, like the idea, I am trying to wrap my head around what atmospheric conditions have to be there in order for fish or frogs to rise up into the sky in large enough numbers to be noticeable coming from the sky and smashing all over the ground. And apparently afterwards they start rotting and it's really fetid and weird. I wonder, in some of these cases, I don't think they ever even were able to propose an origin for the actual animals that were up in the sky. Maybe they got way, way high up in the atmosphere and traveled from another continent. It'd be interesting to see what exact scientific phenomenon can rationalize such a thing away. But I mean, it definitely can be. That being said, it's an interesting thing within the occult as well. We have to keep that in mind, that there's a transformative step-by-step process by which things are rationalized, and in some cases, they're not able to be rationalized at all. That's about all. Peace out.